out, my brother. Yeah.
Boy. What's going on, guys?
Take your seat right over there, my brother.
Yes, sir.
That's
the
right.
throne. Okay, the throne.
Cool beans. So what we doing today, my friend?
Yeah, we got the session for water here. Just gonna kind of run down what I did, how I got it, where we started off and where we left it off at.
Bet.
Yes,
I'm super excited to see your chain and all that other stuff too, by the way. Like, this is, me, like, I really want to see, like, how you went about this and your simple, like, kind of, like, method and stuff like that, and I think I'm going to learn a lot. So, yeah, let's just get to it, man, whatever you want to show, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, first I want to say thank you guys all for coming out, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited to do this with you guys. Also, I also want to put a little prefix in there to let you guys know, songs like these, you guys are going to learn some things, right? But these songs are operating at a very high level. So these songs are coming in to me already sounding phenomenal. You guys don't get to witness the hundreds of thousands of songs that I had to work on that sounded like absolute shit when I got them and then left sounding amazing, right? So take everything you see here with a little grain of salt and understand that things change from session to session. What you're seeing today is not, oh, I'm gonna copy these settings and go put it on my session, right? I prefer to talk more about the ideas of what led me to do the things that I did so that I can go apply that in different sessions. But yeah, let's get into it. You guys live up here? Oh yeah, there we go. Cool, so this is my session, good old Pro Tools. I'm a light theme user for all of you light versus dark themes out there.
Not gonna lie, I was like, yo bro, we gotta update that, but all right, bet.
No, we keeping it light, man, keeping it light,
Old school.
But yeah, we get the sessions in pretty much. The first thing we do is, load everything up to the session. We start with clip gaining vocals, cleaning them up, declipping. Auto-tune obviously adds a lot of artifacts into vocals that we don't want in there, right? So we're just gonna go through comb and RX declip and, gain stage things so that everything kind of flows together. And then usually after that, we'll consolidate or group everything so it's not a bunch of little chops that can potentially get, mishandled, or if you're sliding around quickly, something slides out of place, right? So right here, what you're seeing is the session for water. I'll make it real small so you guys can see everything first. The way that I like to run my sessions is I have my master bus up at the top right here. What this is literally just so that I could put a metric KB on there, and I also have a Insight 2 so I can measure the loudness, and then I also have a Listen To plugin on there. That's pretty much stock on my template. Every session has the same thing. They're pretty much inactive. I do a lot of work with international clients, so this Listen To plugin, the Audio Movers, allows me to live stream it to them in real time. So a lot of the time I'll be doing notes with the artist or the producers over the FaceTime, and they'll be in a studio somewhere in the world, and we'll be doing it live. So that's the reason that's on there. Mix bus is right underneath it. I'll go ahead and get a little bit more into detail with you guys. That'll probably be the last step, but you guys can see there, I got a Neve 1073, little preamp, Goldfoss, 2500, black box, EQ1, and I'll go into detail with these later, just trying to run through this template real quick. From there, I got this Master 2. Now, pretty much what this does is it allows me to change the volume that's going into my mix bus. So let's say sometimes I'm running a little too hot and I just want to bring it down a dB and I don't want to necessarily change anything. I can just go here and just turn this down a dB. It's going to hit the mix bus a little bit lower. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Down here we have the all vocal bus, the all beat bus. Everything ends up coming into those two buses. This is also really useful for us because at the end of every session we have to do deliverables. So if we want to do an instrumental, we just mute the all vocals, print the instrumental down. We want to do an acapella, mute the all beat, just go ahead and print the acapella down.
Question for you, Dro, by the way. Sorry to stop you.
Go ahead.
As far as the all Vox and all beat, are you also bringing effects, like time-based effects, delays and stuff like that into those two buses as well?
So if it's anything, regarding the vocals, it's going into all Vox. Because I want to be able to just mute that and there be absolutely no vocals in the session.
Okay.
So that we can print these things down pretty easily, you know? And then vice versa, the same thing. So we're instrumental, we want to print that down. Or acapella, just mute the instrumental bus.
Right.
Now, there is a difference, right? There's some vocals that are vocal chops that are a part of the beat. And you just got to use your sense, your senses. You're like, okay, cool. If I want an instrumental, do I want these parts in there or do I want to take them out?
Right.
Some of those we actually want to have them in there, right? So keep those routed into that bus.
Okay.
Everything else underneath here, damn, someone's going crazy, huh?
Yeah, what was that, a PMC speaker? What the hell is that?
So all these right here in green are just effects. These are some throws, some delays, some reverbs, and then a little parallel compression, a little doubler, nothing too crazy. Going into my vocal bus here, these are all the lead vocals. This is kind of how I like to break my session down. I like to have all my lead vocals pretty much at the top. The reason that there's some blue and green or blue and pinks here is because some vocals were brought in after we already mixed the session. So that's how I keep the differences of, okay, what's the new vocal versus the old vocal? These blue ones are the new vocals. The pink ones were the original. Right here we have what I have labeled as the all hook bus, right? So these chants right here, as you guys all probably know.
Make me swim, make me harder, make me lose my breath, make me water.
So on this particular session, they had sent me these chants already done. They already had done their mix down of it and sent it to me as an acapella. I would say about 90% of the album is they sent me the individual stems itself, and I had to mix down the vocals. But this was in a rush. Everything was going. They sent it to me like this, and I just had to work with it. All of those vocals, including the leads, gets brought into this all mix bus. So if I mute this right here, even on the hook, it's just gonna be the background vocals there. Everything else is just gonna be lead vocals going into that all bus. It's not something I do very often. It's just this specific session kind of called for that. I wanted to put a little extra glue on all the chants, the lead vocals, the background vocals, everything together, especially when they come in on the second chorus where everything's so much bigger. So I created this bus. But again, not every session is it like this. So I'll break down this lead vocal here. Sometimes we'll have to ride vocals, right? Sometimes you'll look at this little line right here and it'll be written the entire way through the song. Other times, we don't have to do that. It's literally just a couple little tweaks here and there just to kind of level everything out. But again, it's what the song is calling for. Everything that I do is 100% based off of feel, right? I don't want to go in there and be like, oh, well, this is just what I should be doing because this is what you do on every session, right? You ride the vocals. Right. Why? You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't do things just because.
Right. And I was going to ask you, as far as you said, obviously it's case by case when you ride the vocal and stuff like that. What is your technique for riding the vocal? Is it automation, or obviously it's all automation, but are you doing like touch, for instance, in Pro Tools, like to kind of do it? Or are you just like finding a grid, kind of popping that up?
I'll do both. I'll do both. Now, the problem is that if you're going to do touch automation, you got to get rid of your master bus if it's creating delays. Because if not, what you're hearing and what you're doing are two completely different things. So I'll inactivate my mix bus. I'll just output my 2 auxes, do the rides that I need to do, and then just revert it right back.
Got you.
Right? Okay. And also, I don't know if you guys know, but you can nudge those little rides too. So if you kind of just come in here and you highlight this and you say, okay, cool, I want to bring that over to the right, you could use these little nudge features here, and I can move that dot however much I want to.
What was that quick key? What is the quick key for? I know you all
these 2 little arrows right here are, I don't even know what these are called, the comma and the period. And then the M is like the exaggerated version of it. So right now, if I'm on 10 milliseconds here, it'll do 10 milliseconds, but if I do this one, it'll do what I think is like 100.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that comes in super handy when I'm trying to do throws, and let's say sometimes I'll let go of the throw on the beginning of the word of the next, and I was like, oh man, it's too late, I'll just go highlight it. I like the movement that I did, but it ended up too late or something, I'll just drag the whole thing over to the left.
Got you, understand.
Very simple, very easy way to just kind of get it to be nice and tight, right?
Right.
Because for me, guys, the devil is in the details. I'm going to show you guys this session. You'll probably miss a lot of the details because it's so quick, right? But a lot of what I'm doing here is trying to squeeze the most I can out of each one of these plugins. I don't want to just put a plugin on there just because and say, oh, well, I'm going to boost 400 here, and then 2 plugins down the road, I'm taking 400 out. You know what I mean? It makes no sense. Why not just eliminate that and have no boost, no subtraction, right? Just keep it nominal all the way through. So I'll get started with these vocals here. So let me.
Normally, I could keep my cool, but tonight I'm whining.
So pretty much everything's going into this compressor, lead vocals. I got pretty much, I would say a medium speed attack. I'm pretty much trying to let through the emotion of the song, right? So right now she's saying, da-na-nee, and then it kind of gets a little quieter. I want it to be a little bit more evened out, but at the same time, if the attack is too quick, you're kind of cutting out the pronunciation of the lines. You're taking out the attack of everything. The feeling kind of just goes away. So I'm trying to keep a little bit of that as close as I can to fast, but where it still lets some of that emotion come through. And then also, for the release time, I like to make the release timed with the actual song. I'm not calculating this. This isn't like a number per se. I'm just doing it all by ear. If I hear the release of the actual compressor, chances are it's too slow, right? I have to back it off a little bit.
Gotcha.
Most of the time, I'll start it off as fast as possible. I'll go all the way to the left like this, and I'll start compressing.
Normally, I could keep my cool, but tonight I'm wildin'.
Right where the words are ending, you know what I mean?
Right. Question about your ratio, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So you're using a 5-to-1 ratio.
5-to-1 ratio,
What do you notice
yep.
about the change in ratio from like a 2-to-1 to a 5-to-1? Because obviously I can tell you manipulated that right there.
For
so
sure.
what made you go for a 5-to-1? Like what was you looking for when you
know,
did
this
that?
is pretty much my starting point. I feel
Okay.
like 5-to-1 is like a decent starting point. I don't hit it too hard, you know, and also it's a good thing because I love to, this is always my first plugin on the chain. Okay. Unless I get really shitty vocals and I have to like carve out some like super low end or something like that, right. Just so it doesn't hit the compressor that way. Right. I'll leave it like this. And this also tells me, is my gain staging into this plugin correct? So if I leave it at -20 right here, and I'm hitting just under 3 dBs of compression, I know, okay, cool, my input gain is right.
Right. Okay.
So I don't have to, I'll either back it off from there, and that also tells me, is my clip gaining good? Do I have one part of the vocal that's just super loud, and another part of the vocal that's not loud enough?
Right.
And I'm trying to rely on all these compressors to do that.
Right.
For what? You know what I mean? Let me go manually fix these rides so that everything can kind of be even and the compressor does less work.
Gotcha. So this is kind of like an indicator for you that you've kind of established with this one
Exactly.
plug at the top. Gotcha.
That's how I kind of know, okay, cool, this is a good volume for me.
Right. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, you know, the gain output just kind of depends on how much I'm taking down. Sometimes I'll try to keep it to where if I bypass the plugin, it doesn't actually add any volume.
Right.
Sometimes I need it to crank a little bit. You know what I mean? I want it to have a little bit more juice going into my next plugins, depending on what's going on.
Right, but you definitely want to do that because you want to make sure that you're not tricking yourself with just volume. So you try to match it, see if it's actually improving.
100%.
And then go from there. Okay.
The
totally
biggest
understand.
trick in audio, I mean, 90% of the time I'm working, my eyes are closed. Because I don't want to look at the screen. I don't want to look at the graphs. I don't want to look at all this cool graphics they're giving us and stuff like that. I want to solely hear what's happening. And if I bypass that plugin and it's way louder or way lower, I'm not getting an actual read on what's going on, you know? So I'm super, super, super like attentive to that. You might even see right here, I'm boosting the output of this one 4 dBs as well. Now again, this isn't something I always do. This is just this session required that, and that's what I went with, you know? And I don't sit here and think about it. Like, it's not a part of my day to be like, what should I do to this? You know what I mean? I just kind of go for it. Okay, cool. Vocals got to be compressed. They need to kind of be a little bit more flatline throughout the whole thing. Perfect. Now we're going to go ahead, EQ. What else needs? Is that EQ good? Perfect. Let's move on to the next part. You know what I mean? What does this need? Is it too thin? Let's add some body. Is it not wide enough? Let's add, you know, some width. I'm not necessarily following like a chain and saying, oh, this is what I have to do every single time because this is what I do. You know what I mean? I let the song tell me what to do. But yeah, you guys can see here, I'm boosting a little bit of 10, 9K. I'm also kind of taking out a little bit right here with this filter at 17K. I feel like what that does is it does a really nice curve right at the top, right? So you got one kind of shelf boosting, and then you have another filter kind of cutting out. That also creates a really nice shape for the boost where it's not all the way to 20,000 hertz, and you might have these little noise artifacts up there, you know?
Gotcha.
I also do that on my mix bus, which I'll show you guys later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, I didn't do anything on this one, barely anything. Usually here, I'll do a little bit of subtractive, you know, depending on what it is, maybe a little bit of additive. Usually I like to keep it in the range of this like 3 to, you know, 6K on this one. Here, 400 hertz, I'm taking out barely 1.5 dBs. 200 hertz, I'm taking out about 3.5 dBs. These vocals came in a little muddy on the bottom. So, and you kind of tell these vocals weren't recorded the best, right? This was one of those songs where, you know, they might have been in like a vacation house or something and they're kind of doing it with what they have, not, I'm at the studio recording on $20,000 microphone and $100,000 equipment. This was kind of a run and gun session.
Gotcha.
You know,
so would you say, and I see that, I think you cut at like, what is like 210 hertz or something like that, if I'm not mistaken? Around there?
Right here. So the filter's at 83.
Got you.
I don't like to go much higher. I see some sessions come in, guys, where like these people are cutting these at 100 hertz and all this stuff. Sure. Does it sound better? It does. But what you're doing is you're basically putting a Band-Aid on it. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of vocal tone that comes out of those 80 and above, that 80 to 120, where if you don't treat it properly, yeah, it's going to sound like shit and it's going to be muddy, right? But if you treat it properly, it's going to sound nice. Right. It's going to be full, but not too thick. You know, and that kind of goes back to what we're talking about, analog, right? Everything I do is in the box, but I know what analog sounds like. I've chased analog for so many years. I've dialed in my brain. These are what analog sounds like. These are digital songs. So now when I'm doing these things, I'm kind of keeping it in mind. I want a warmer tone. Tyla specifically always asks me, she says, I want my vocals to be warm. I don't want them to be thin and like too present. Even though she's a pop star, she wants to still keep a little bit of the rawness in the vocals, which is important, right? Because that's at least to me, that's where the emotion is. Like for most of the songs that I listen to, I feel like the things that aren't perfect in the song is what makes the song perfect. So if you try to clean everything up, all of a sudden you got this real pristine thing that's going on, but there's just no emotion in it. You know, it's kind of just like lost a little bit, and it's like I'm hearing it, but I'm not feeling it. So a lot of what I try to do is maintain that feeling, right? And also another thing that's really important, I think, is we have to remember, guys, that when we're mixing records, we're not mixing for other engineers, right? It's a big deal. I guarantee you if I ask for a volunteer to come up here and pull up their Pro Tools session, most people would say no. It's like we're afraid to show what we're doing, right? I'm not mixing to impress other engineers. To be honest with you, I don't care what other engineers think. Right. For me, I'm mixing to make my clients happy. And usually the people that I put on the forefront of that list is the artist and the producer. These are the people that created the song. Managers, A&Rs, execs, they're all equally important, but at the same time, they usually also lean on artist and producer. Right. These are the people that are dialed in with these songs, man. Like they're living with these songs, It's like they're breathing this song, morning, night, whatever it is,
Right.
They know if you change the smallest thing.
They're gonna notice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I'm mixing just to impress you guys, chances are, producer's not gonna be happy with it. He's gonna be like, bro, this sounds cool, but it's not what I had.
Right.
You know what I mean? So at the same time, you gotta put that hat on. What would they want, but give them the best version of that, rather than what do I want? Right. If I wanna give you what I want, I'm just gonna go make my own song. Right. I'm not gonna just sit here and try to force feed you what I think is the best, right?
I get that, for sure.
Cool, and also here, I'm using a little bit of this compression. You guys can see it.
I could keep my cool, but tonight I'm wildin'.
Very, very little. I like to do minimal things with each plugin. I'm not like a huge, try to get the most out of it. Now, some plugins I do, like this 1176, I feel like it's very transparent. So this one, I'm compressing the shit out of it.
Normally, I could keep my cool, but tonight I'm wildin'.
But the settings are in a certain place to where it sounds transparent still, right? If I go here and I turn this release to be slower,
normally,
chances are it's gonna sound like it's dragging out a little too much. You know what I mean? It's gonna be, okay, cool. On solo, this might sound like it's a little warmer or whatever, a little fuller, but then you put it back in the song and it's like, it's not just, especially with Afrobeat, everything is so percussive. Timing of everything has to be kind of like a marriage, Reading, Exactly. So if you have this release that's way over the beat and the thing's going and it's just not, time aligning, it doesn't work. And that's where the life starts to get sucked out of it.
Gotcha.
So I like fast releases, but now you have to remember, fast releases, slow attacks usually result in harsher vocals. So if you're gonna do that, cool, you're gonna get a better outcome by not having, an overly compressed vocal, but you're also gonna have to manage the harshness of the vocal, Usually where that happens is right here. So you can see I have a little bit of EQs going on here. Usually for vocals, I like to keep this into linear phase or natural phase, just depends on what's going on.
Can you actually, now this is a big thing that a lot of people don't touch in Pro Q3 that I see. What did you realize when you hit natural phase and linear phase as far as like the sound and stuff like that?
To be honest with you, bro, I have no idea what they mean.
Yeah.
I just know they sound good.
Yes, a fact.
100%. I have no idea. Realistically speaking, I just go through the options with my eyes closed and I say that one sounds the best.
Right.
Run with it.
That's a fact. Cool. That's good to know.
And 90% of the time, bro, like that's where most of my answers come from.
Gotcha.
Closing my eyes and flicking through them and saying which one sounds the best.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't claim to know everything, man. I just know what feels good and what doesn't.
I respect it. So totally. That's why when I see you doing it, I was like, I don't meet many people that know. Like, hey, I just play around and try shit. So that's
sure.
something to know for sure. Heck yeah.
All right.
Can you blow my mind? Set off my whole body if I give you my.
So you guys see, I'm pretty much just doing like management work, right? Just taming that little high end a little bit. Right here in that 3400, it starts to get a little harsh. I'm just taming that a little bit, especially when she goes into certain notes. Sometimes if she moves too much and goes really high or goes really low, I'll have to automate that rather than putting another plugin on. I'll just automate it. You know what I mean? For this section of the song, she's singing in this range, it's perfect. For right here, she goes high. Usually you can grab all of your EQ points and just slide them all over, and now they'll match whatever that step up in the notes that she was doing, you know? Now, I'm not gonna sit here and do, you know, you could put this little keyboard thing up here and you could drag all these and you can move them down or up or whatever. I'm not doing all that. I'm just going by ear and feeling. And then here I'm just, you know, trying to clean up a little bit of that muddiness at the bottom.
Gotcha.
Here I'm doing the same thing, but I also feel like if you do too much here, it thins the vocals out. You're not really feeling the presence, that bottom end heaviness of the vocals, right? So what this allows it to do, the dynamic EQ allows it to be there until it's overbearing, right? Until you need to take some out.
Right.
Then you can just go ahead and, you know, you'll see that it's kind of operating at all times. As she goes lower, it affects it more.
Right. Because obviously the tonality is, you know, her bass note, that fundamental is changing, going down.
Exactly. See, right here it's hitting heavy. But right there, not so much. You know what I mean? It's kind of out of the way. Another thing I do is with the C6, right? But again, I'm not slamming this thing.
Can you blow my mind? Set off my whole body.
But again, guys, there are sessions where I have this thing right here, like this.
Can you blow my mind?
This is just because this song came in good. The vocal quality is good. It's not like it's having all these crazy things going on, so I don't have to do reparative work, right? I'm just doing subtle little things that are slowly enhancing the overall grand picture. And then at the end of it, it's like, man, the picture sounds amazing. But it's all these little steps that kind of led up to that, all these little, you know, details that are getting there. And then everybody knows Soothe, you know, but another thing,
Can you blow my mind?
very low.
What put you at 9? What makes you do it at 9%?
Again, man, close my eyes and just fuck with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm just 100% of the time I'm going off the feel.
Right.
There's some sessions where it's at 100%, and what I'll do is I'll bring this depth down right here. So I'm still not doing too much. You know what I mean? There's sessions that I receive from people, man, where this thing is cranked, it's at 100%, and this is what they're doing. For what? If you're relying on a plugin that's automated like this to do that much work, chances are you're kind of leaving some of the work on the table before it even gets to that point.
I get that.
You know what I mean?
Another question I have for you, and what I'm seeing in your suit too, is your quality. You have
Yes.
a 4-time oversampling, you have ultra. Was that on purpose that you did it that way?
Yes, I always keep it oversampled and I always keep it in ultra quality.
Nice.
Sometimes when the vocal is a little too harsh, I'll lower it a little bit just so it kind of cleans that up a little bit.
Okay.
Because this does add so much clarity to it that it
Right.
could become harsh if
That's
it's
why
already there.
I stopped you there, because
Yeah.
I've been going with the resolution going way higher, and my oversampling with vocals specifically, because I
Yep.
noticed sometimes it gives me a little bit of a tone. So that's why I was wondering if that was the same thing for you. So
100%.
that's interesting to see. I just wanted to stop that because I definitely wanted to know, because I feel like
Yeah.
people don't touch that.
But it's
too
important
much.
because
Right.
most people think, oh man, you're barely doing anything with that plugin.
Right.
You're right. I'm barely doing anything with it. But in conjunction with all the barely doing anythings with the last couple, 4 or 5 plugins, that's where the magic is.
Adding
You
up.
know what I mean?
Get you.
If I do too much with one plugin, I'm just sucking the life out of it.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, the song just doesn't feel right. It might sound good, but it just doesn't feel right, you know? And we're in the business of feeling, man. Like, these songs have to move people enough for them to go out of their way to do a video to it and post it on their Instagram, or for them to, you know, whatever it may be, like go out of their way to go put it on their playlist or whatever the case is. That's emotion driven. It's not, nobody in the world is gonna go, oh my God, man, that song sounds so great, you know? Nobody cares, bro. Like, that's the reality of it. You know, it's unfortunate. Like, we really care. But in the grand scheme of the world, they don't care because they don't know. But now if you give them a bad mix, they go, oh, well, I don't like this song.
Right.
I don't know why I don't like it, but I just don't like this song. You know what I mean? So we're kind of like working in like the shadows almost, where it's like people don't even know how essential what we're doing is until they hear the opposite.
Right.
You know?
Understood.
But cool, keep going here. Just a little de-esser, very simple, very tight band. Again, barely doing anything, just kind of grabbing some of those little moments that are just kind of peeking over, you know. And then over here, just an exciter. So with this vocal, this isn't something I always do, but this vocal had a little bit of rawness to it because, again, they weren't in the best place, right? So by adding a little bit of excitement to it, it almost kind of plays to the rawness of the feeling, but I can kind of control it, right? So now I could give it a little extra. So you see here, I'm doing a little more right here on the bottom end from this 207 to this 1K than I'm not even touching this range right here, which is the more, you know, harsh frequencies and all that stuff, right? I'm trying to get a little bit more body out of the vocal.
roundness.
Exactly. I want to get a little more excitement. I want it to be a little fuller. I want it to be, you know, a little more present, but I'm getting it out of this way rather than just EQing it.
Right.
You know, because I could go and grab an EQ and just boost it.
Right.
But it doesn't sound the same.
Right, because you're using harmonic saturation here.
Exactly.
What makes you use the tube setting on this one specifically? Wait, what do you notice about the tube setting?
Close my eyes and I just flick through them, man. I hate to keep saying that to you guys, man, but it's just the truth. Right. It really is the truth. I literally sit here and I flick through, you know, a couple of these, sometimes all of them, just to see what's the best. A lot of the time, you know, I'll use tape on the higher end. I feel like the tape really softens some of the higher, you know, frequencies a little bit, which is nice. You know, sometimes the tube kind of adds a little bit of warmth to the vocal, which is nice. A lot of the times I'll do tube on the bottom end, tape on the top end. So, you know, mixing them both up, trying to get something different out of it. You know? Right, and
playing with the sonics and stuff.
Exactly.
Like that. Okay.
And again, just trying to squeeze the most that I can out of this plugin without overdoing it.
Right.
You know, I don't want it to feel like, okay, cool, like this sounds like something completely different or, you know, than what we had before. Right. I'm trying to play into what they had. A little bit rawer of a vocal, you know what I mean? Kind of playing with that saturation to add that back into the song after I just got done cleaning it up. Okay. So now I have a clean vocal, you add a little bit of that, it kind of brings it back into the world that it was in, but it's still better than where it was.
Right, because you actually did so much fixing and kind of like, you know, carving 100%. And stuff. So now you got a more controlled sound, which was like the original, but now it's a little bit more controlled.
Exactly.
Right, I get you.
100%.
Okay.
Sick. But yeah, so and then other than that, just here, I have this short EMT plate, which is pretty straightforward, man. This is a it kind of acts like a room, less than a second of decay. It's 100% wet, got a little small pre-delay on it. Ultimately, what I'm doing is if you ever stand in a room, you clap your hand, it's that one quick, you know, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. I'm trying to get that a little bit more lively, so it sounds like they're kind of in like more of an open space. Like, you know, studios, they have like the all wooden booths and stuff like that. You kind of get this really rich, lively sound. Gotcha. Kind of imitating that a little bit.
Okay, gotcha.
And then also, I got a hall here. A lot of the times this stuff will be automated. So here, this hall is automated, you know, the verse and the pre's. And the hooks sometimes a little lower than, you know, kind of add some more, because obviously when it gets to the hook and you got all these vocals, you're not hearing such subtle details anymore. You kind of got to crank it up a little bit more.
Just to be, so it can be heard and felt. And by the way, I want to open this up to questions in about a minute or two, so if you do have any questions, kind of have it on your phone and be ready, because I definitely want to make sure that we get to questions and stuff too.
And then here's just a plate. So for the hall, I really love this Seventh Heaven plugin.
Oh man, I keep hearing about this plugin, dude.
Really love it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you guys know what the Bricasti is, this is pretty much the plugin version of it, as good as I can find.
Okay.
Yeah, and ultimately, you know, a lot of the settings on here, very, very straightforward. Hall, large hall, you know, and I'll kind of play with some of the pre-delay. I'll play with some of the roll-offs. You know, after that, I'm actually adding this filter right here to that hall. So I'm cutting a lot of the low and cutting a lot of the high out. Right. You know? Right. And this, what it does is too, is allows space for that plate reverb right here to kind of shine through a little bit more on the top end. You see, I don't have it active on that one. Sometimes I do. And then also I just add a little sidechain compression. So as the vocals are hitting, now certain songs requires a lot of it, because this song it's not really a wet song. You know, if you're talking about like a weekend song where it's like very wet, you know, you could get aggressive with that and create a super cool, clear vocal that's not washed out, but still have all that reverb behind it.
And reverb. So you're using the basically sidechain and reverb. So when the vocal hits, basically the compressor is saying pull down, and then when it's there, it blooms right back up.
100%.
Favorite, like I said, one of my favorite techniques.
But you gotta do it subtle.
Got you.
Because if you don't do it subtle, unless you're going for that effect,
right? Got you.
It could kind of get in the way, because now you're hearing this breathing going on, and like you're like, this sounds unnatural.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay.
My whole thing, man, is trying to make it feel natural.
Right.
But I'll kind of fast forward down a little bit.
Sure.
One of the cool things here on this session was actually, I use this X noise plugin. A lot of people know this for taking like, you know, noise out, like, you know, static and that type of stuff. What I'm actually using it for, though, is to carve a lot of the high end off of this. So if I solo this chant here and I take this off, you'll notice it's very high ended. And that in the studio on level 11 is gonna kill your ears, right? So with this plugin, if I put this on, it actually carves a lot of that high end out.
Make me harder, make me lose my, make me sweat, make me harder.
And then to get even crazy, I never do this.
Right. Gotcha.
It's just what it required on this song.
Right.
That high end was still blaring. It had no room for Tyla's lead vocal to sit on top of this gang vocal.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So you did that to kind of differentiate the lead from that chant. When
I needed to that body of the chant, and I needed her to sit right on top of it.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Understood.
So that's kind of what I was doing right there. So with it in,
Make me harder.
now again, you solo this, you go, wow, that really sounds like shit. You know what I mean?
It's dark.
Yeah, for sure, no problem. You put it in the mix, sounds amazing. Right? Nobody's ever questioned, man, did you take out 10 dBs of high end on that?
Right.
Nobody ever questions that, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's what does it do in the mix as a whole, you know? So if I play it together,
Make me sweat. Make me harder.
Tyla is still the star of the show. You know what I mean?
Make me water.
Now, fortunately for Tyla, she has like choirs come in. These people that actually can sing really well. They're all harmonizing in real life. They're not doing like, you know, okay, you do one, I'll do another. They're actually in a room together singing it. There's one microphone in the middle capturing all of them. So, you know, it's operating at a high level already. You're not having to kind of like melodyne different vocals in tune and then EQ this part out. It's already kind of sounding good. I'm just trying to keep her the star of the show. It's Tyla's song. It's not the choir song. You know what I mean? And then I just added a little doubler right here just to kind of add the width. Very simple doubler. I usually like to go for this basic doubler or this doubler 4-voice preset, and then usually I'll just mess with it depending on, you know, what I'm looking for. But those are usually two of my starting points. Lead vocal is pretty much a replica of the actual lead vocal here. There's just very subtle changes. You might see this is a little different. These points are going to be different. They're not going to be on the same frequencies. They might look similar, but they're slid around a little bit because she's doing a different vocal range. So, and then here, just a couple of background vocals that the writer had included in there.
Can you blow my
Very subtle. Just kind of adding a little bit of width here at the bottom, taking a little bit of that high end just so it doesn't compete with Tyla. Because if I keep stacking all these high end elements together, man, I'm going to have to crank the shit out of her high end to really, exactly, to keep, but again, she is the star of the show. You know what I mean? Everybody else is a supportive element. So I'm going to make sure that she sounds as great as possible and start to add these elements in, keeping them out of the way of her vocal. And then,
I like that in the mid-range you actually boosted the side information like on that particular range to kind of sweeten everything up.
a little side action right there, you know what I mean? Kind of get it nice and full, let her sit right there in the middle nice and tight, you know what I mean?
I get it.
They're telling me I'm short on time here, so I'm gonna just run through this real quick.
Sure. Yeah, for
right?
sure. I want to get to the
I want to
questions.
show you guys how you don't necessarily need to do too much, right? Simplicity, again, as you've been hearing me say over and over and over again, is the key element in all these things. Now, granted, that doesn't mean if you get a really shitty session, you have to be super simple. Sometimes you got to get a little exaggerated with it. You know what I mean? Sometimes, I mean, I've done it for years and years and years where I've had really shitty songs. I mean, the pathway to lead you to songs that need less work is by working on all those songs that are, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
super
I get you.
shitty. And then
Yes.
they keep saying, man, like you made that sound incredible from where it was. And then, you know, one thing leads to the next, and now you start getting songs that barely need any work.
Exactly,
You know?
right.
Now, granted, obviously we do a lot to the songs. I can play you the demo. It's a huge difference.
Right.
But it's all through subtleties.
Right.
You know? So here, bass, there's this bass here. I'm going to run through, guys, so stick with me here. This is just the bass that's going through the song. Little carving out of the bottom there. It was kind of getting a little flappy on the bass. Adding a very, very tiny little bit of drive right here on this T. Now, if I bypass this, you guys might not be able to hear it in here, but in my studio, it is the biggest difference, and I barely do anything. You know, I just put the plugin on there, I hit that T button, it's my favorite usually for basses, and man, it's like you don't even have to really turn it up, and it's like, wow, that's doing a lot. You know, so very little. Personally speaking, I don't like to use wet, dry when it comes to these types of things. Because I feel like you're taking two signals and you're trying to combine them and you're trying to keep them phase aligned properly so everything is hitting, because phase is a big deal, right? You want everything to be punchy, you want it to be full, you want it to cut through, got to keep the phase right. A lot of the times I would rather add very little of a plug-in and keep it 100% wet than try to add 50% of one and 50% of the other. Now it's a phasey sound.
Yeah,
you
you'll
know
notice
what I mean?
that you start losing frequencies and some cancellation is happening and stuff like
Exactly.
that. Get you, okay.
This is very simple. It's a side chain for the kick. So pretty much whenever the kick's hitting, it's just side chaining out this. Again, very little. It's not doing much.
Right.
Just poking it enough so that the compressor on the mix bus doesn't have to bite as hard. You know what I mean?
Understood.
Again, here's the bass and the hook. Now this one, I just use this plugin to make it 100% mono. Sometimes I use this plugin to kind of, dig out certain frequencies and do little surgical things, mono or stereo. Right. This one, only thing I'm doing is 100% mono. If I take that out, you'll notice the bass has a little bit of left going on. You know what I mean? And I wanted to keep that right down the middle. So if this ever gets played in a club that's a mono club, everything stays nice and tight. Exactly. And then again, just doing the compressor right there. Log drum, same thing. Now, again, guys, there are certain songs where I have to use the decapitator and I have to put a little distortion on that log drum. I have to EQ the log drum. I have to do this and that. This song, I didn't have to do much. I wanted to just get a little bit more of the tonality out of the top end of the log drum since that bass is doing so much for the bottom. So I just added this little right there. So it's literally just bringing that down a little bit to make room for that log drum to come in. You know what I mean? And that just, again, this is on that bass, just keeps it, you know what I mean? Keeps it cleaner. And I get a little bit of tonality through it rather than just trying to boost it up here or whatever and doing that. Now, again, this is subtle, but when you put the whole thing together and the mix bus comes together, it makes huge differences.
Right. I actually noticed that rumble like that. It kind of feels a little muddier with that, like when you took it off, like
Take
a little
off.
bit of that mud kind of tightened everything up.
And now, again, in solo, chances are you're not going to hear much.
Right.
When I was working with Dave Pensato, one of the things he would always tell me is that soloing a song kills your record, right? Or soloing a track, kills your record because you start dialing it in to have no relations to anything else. And a lot of the times people say, okay, cool, well, this needs to be wider. Well, width is a relationship to something that's not as wide. Right. If everything's super wide, how do you know it's wide? If something's super loud and there's something low, you have a dynamic difference right there. You could tell the difference. Right. If everything's just loud or everything's just quiet, there's no difference. You don't hear any difference. You're like, okay, there's no, you know what I mean? There's no life here.
So basically, you're correlating more or less like with perception, right?
Everything is perception.
Right. So
even the impact of how the hook comes in and it moves you is, based upon what came before that. Right. If your pre is smacking super hard and then your hook comes in and it doesn't have room to grow, there's no, amplification of that hook. You don't feel it when it comes in. You know what I mean?
Got you. Right.
So all these things are really just to lead up to being able to maximize the hook potential or the, impact of when that hook comes.
Right,
what I mean?
Stuff like that. Okay.
Cool. And then moving down here to the drums, drum, bus, pretty much all the drums are going through this. Basically, just doing a little bit of drive right here at the bottom, a little bit of frequency. These kicks and Afro beats are really low. They don't have punch. Right. They're all sub kicks. So I'm at 55 hertz here, 14%, very low. Drive to 8, 20%. I'm not using anything else. I'm at 100% mix again. I'm not doing that.
And what do you notice with the low frequency enhancer? Like because like you said, a lot of the Afrobeats like kicks are very punchy, like kind of subby feeling.
They're very subby.
Yeah.
100%. Where hip hop is like punchy.
Yeah,
you know
it's like
what I mean?
clicky, like I can hear
For sure.
Yeah.
And on this one, I use it on different genres. So if I want to and I have a hip hop kick, usually I'll do around like 150 hertz. Okay. That's where I feel like I get that punch out of that hip hop kick where the 808's sitting right underneath it.
Gotcha.
For Afrobeat, it's almost kind of the opposite. It's like the kick sits underneath it, the log drums and the bass are kind of playing above it. You know what I mean?
Wow, okay.
So it's kind of doing the opposite a little bit.
Understood.
But yeah, here I just went with my gut and I just kind of did what I was feeling. It ended up being 55, was giving the low end of the drums a nice little kind of, curvature, that little sheen. I'll show all this for you guys here. So without it, with it, very subtle. It's just filling it in, just that tiny percent. And again, 5% here, 5% there, 5% there, it all adds up, And then here, just kind of basically taking out these little frequencies that are kind of sticking out a little bit. This one was out of the shaker. This shaker, once in a while, you'll hear it go really loud. And this one, I was just kind of taking it out a little bit. And then same thing with the snare. So that little rim shot right there, when it gets a little too loud, it just pulls it down a tiny little bit. Now again, not doing much. That's 1.28 dBs, a very, very small amount. Again, natural phase, that was the one that sounded the best. Usually to me, zero latency sounds like shit. So I'm either between, the natural phase or whatever that other one is. I feel like one of the sauces for this type of stuff in like percussion elements, Afrobeat, obviously, everybody's always like, oh man, how you get your percussion to sound like that?
I definitely want to know this.
Yeah, in this specific situation, again, Sammy, the producer of the song, is phenomenal. Sample choice is your number one go-to thing that's gonna make your song better, right? If you pick the right samples, you don't have to mix the shit. It sounds incredible the way it is. Now, usually, I'm not a go put plugins on first. For me, I'm volume all the way. Volume and panning is the first thing that I do in the whole session. I want to pan all these elements. As you can see, a lot of these have like +1, +2, or negative, a little bit here. A lot of the pannings on these aren't, see, this one's 83, that one's 91, but a lot of them are at 100 because this guy is doing a lot of it on his own. You can see here that it's already kind of panned. I just exaggerated it a little bit more. You know what I mean? But if somebody gives me a song at 100%, everything straight down the middle, you can guarantee I'm going to move everything out of the way. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to go 100% to the left or 100% to the right. If you do just a little bit here, and then this other element is in relations a little bit more to that one, now the whole thing starts to grow, and it becomes something, you know? So yeah, and then basically all these drums are being routed to, so these percussions here are being routed to this perks. This perks, I'm just using a neutron exciter. Again, just trying to get a little bit of excitement out of these little perks right here. I'll give you a little before and after with those. So it's just adding a little bit of excitement to it, just a little harmonic saturation. And then here, again, bringing out that little tom a little bit, cutting out whatever frequency that was. It's probably like a little high bongo that was kind of poking out a little too much, you know what I mean? So I'll poke it out there. Sometimes, you know, I'll just go back to the sound that's too loud, bring it down. Sometimes I'll do an EQ and bring it down, you know? Just depends on what it is. Very, very small things though. A lot of this one here, I'll solo just that one for you guys. This one is just a lot of noise in the top end, you know? So I don't necessarily need all that. I want it to be fuller. I just kind of put a little shelf, poke the bottom end a little bit out. Very simple stuff. You know what I mean? It's not rocket science. It's just kind of trying to fill the void when everything is together. I don't solo to do this shit. Everything is being done together. I'm soloing it for you guys so you guys can kind of hear the differences, but if you solo it, you're gonna kill the record. You know what I mean? You gotta keep it all together, keep it alive, you know? But all this stuff is being routed to this drum parallel song, to this track right here. This is where I feel like I get a lot of, I get a lot of life out of this. And usually I don't add it to my kick drums. I just put it from the rim shot down to the percussions. I usually don't add it to like crashes or something that's like too high-endy. It just keeps it right in the meat of it, right? And what I'm trying to do is whenever these, so what I'm trying to do is create a bass line, right? If I squash it and I create this bass line and then I mix that in, now these elements that are moving this way right here are moving around this bass line. Now if this is too high and you're right here, that bass line now is no longer the bass line. Now it's just going lower, so you're kind of like, what's going on? If it's too low, you don't even hear it, you don't have that same effect. But if you put it right there in the middle, now when a couple of elements go up, it breathes. When it goes down, it breathes. But there's that bass line where you're always hearing those little elements in there.
Just kind of clicking it, just playing with my ear and stuff like that.
Exactly.
This is something I've always wanted to know about you because I brought this up to you just in past conversations about essence and stuff and how your percussion sounds. And I always wondered, I was like, dude, I know you're like, no, it's easy. It's, you know, I do this and that. But I knew deep down, I was like, there's something very small that you're doing that's giving you that. I feel like with what you just showed me as far as processing those percussions by itself, no kick or no crashes or nothing like too
100%.
wild, you're allowing that breathing that I always hear in your record. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't know for anyone else, that was a huge gem for me. That light bulb went off for me. Thank you for that. I just wanted to make
That's
sure
why I said this is the sauce one, right? This is where everybody goes, man, like how do you do that?
Yeah.
You know, and this goes again, I do this with vocals. So just kind of going back up here to the lead vocal, I have this parallel compression if I'm creating that bass line again. But if I mute this, if we go here, you're not gonna hear a big level change.
Can you blow my mind?
You barely don't even hear it. It's really just creating that bass line. So if she goes below it, it holds her right there. But she still has room to go above it, you know? And here, I'm just squashing the shit out of it and then limiting the shit out of it. This is a Dave Pensato trick. You guys probably have seen it on his stuff. And then I'm just lowering the output of it. Exactly, blending it in, creating that bass line. Now, you could do that for many different elements. You know, if there's a super dynamic guitar that's playing, you could do that to the guitar. If there's, you know, a bass line you could do that to the bass line. Usually, I keep the whole phase thing in mind too, so I'm not trying to do it to something as important as a kick. I'm not trying to do it as important to a bass line, you know what I mean? I'm trying to do it to something that's the percussion, that's little elements. I'm trying to give a little bit of juice to the vocals. I'm not trying to do it to these main elements that you're like, oh man, like what's that?
Right, and
you
messing
know,
with the phase and shit like that.
exactly, because then everything starts to get a little blurry, you know.
And blurry is the best word I can think for phase. Like that's such a true thing.
100%. So you just go down here. Now these are all my music tracks. Usually I keep all the music tracks here at the bottom. I like to keep everything kind of the same color unless there's something crazy going on. If I had like an orchestra sent in or something, or if it's like, 10 tracks of violins, then I'll make the violins a different color. But usually I like to just, from a quick perspective, know drums, vocals, bass, music.
Gotcha.
And then I'll go into the individual elements there.
Okay.
This is like a little light blue track. That's a vocal effect. So it kind of, I just wanted it to stand out so that I could kind of know what was going on.
I understand. And please have your questions ready by all means in a second. Too.
Yeah, we're taking this thing way over, man.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
we giving these guys their time's worth out of
I
it.
know, for
Sorry,
sure.
Ali.
Make
I'm bad.
Make some noise,
Yeah.
man.
They might not invite us back next year,
sure.
man.
I'm not gonna lie. I may have had an ulterior motive against him. All I want to know, he knows. I was like, I want to see the percussion. Just show me the percussion. So I'm not gonna lie. I would have been sitting right back there with y'all with a hoodie on if I wasn't on the stage with him. But
That's why I held out on the percussions because I knew he was about to cut me
I
off.
know.
you
Yeah.
know?
I was like, hold on.
But
like-
hold on, let me finish real quick before y'all
Yeah,
get the
do-
questions.
do your
I'm gonna
thing.
just show y'all the music and then we'll be done. Master bus and we'll be done. So real quick, again, everything just goes right through this music bus. A lot of the times I have these preset because sometimes the music fights with the vocals, right? So what I'll do is I'll sidechain some of these, and usually the way I'll do that is I'll go here, I'll hit this auto button, I'll hit this little button right here, which tells it to listen to the sidechain. So whatever bus is inputting, I usually have this verb sidechain on my actual vocal bus. So now as the vocals happen, and then you can adjust how much you actually want it to do. So if I wanted to compress the shit out of it, or I can bring it up and not do too much. But this allowing me to isolate just the frequency that's combating with the vocal, you know? So if it's like the low end of a Rhodes that's kind of clogging up the vocal, but when the vocal's not playing, I want to hear that fullness of the Rhodes, I'll do it this way.
Gotcha.
Rather than carving it out of the Rhodes, and then it feels like it's not as thick, you know what I mean?
When the vocal's not there, it's full. Like you're allowing it to fully be there when the vocal's not there. And stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
you
that's
got to
cool.
do it to the point where you can't tell. Like if you play the record, you're not going to hear that happening.
No.
You know what I mean? If you could hear it happening, you're doing it too much. And that's usually what I do. I'll exaggerate it. I'll hear, okay, cool, this is what this is doing. It's going crazy, right? And then I'll start bringing it back down until the point where it's transparent. Then you feel, okay, well, this isn't doing anything. You go bypass it and you're like, whoa, this is actually doing a lot. You know what I mean? So you want it to be very transparent.
Gotcha.
Here on this record, I use the black box across the music aux. Sometimes I'll use the black box. Sometimes I'll use the BX saturator. It depends. Sometimes I use the UAD. Sometimes I'll just go with the BX one. I have both of them, but
Gotcha.
One of the presets I like to start off with a lot. I mean, I have my own here, Dro, but where is it? It's gentle saturation. This is like a good starting point for me. Very gentle. It does make things a little bit louder, but if I just compensate for that and bring over it's fine. It comes back down to normal, but it's adding a lot of width and kind of body and fullness and kind of allowing those drums to sit in the middle, the music to sit on the edges, you know what I mean? It kind of allows the whole picture to come together, but very subtly, you know? Some of the times, if I don't want to use that, another plugin that I really love is this Shep 73. Now, if I go to this side boost right here, I'm putting it in mid-side, and all I'm doing is boosting the sides. So now, again, I have all these drums in the middle, all this music is just gonna come up on the sides a little bit, if the information is there. If it's not doing much, you know what I mean? But that's another plugin that I really love to use on that on that music bus there. Here for the Rhodes, I prefer these plugins that are kind of all built in one, so I don't have to put 4 different plugins on there. But doing a little bit of EQ work, doing a little bit of compression, nothing too crazy, doing a little bit of excitement. Here again, mix is bringing it down on this one. It sounded good. Not the biggest fan of doing the whole mix thing, but sometimes it sounds good. Sometimes it doesn't. Also, just do a little MXR here. Sometimes I use this MXR. Right here, you can see I use the preset constant chorus, and then I kind of just adjust it from there, and then I'm just mixing it back in to where it's just adding a little bit of width and body to that Rhodes. Now, you gotta be careful. Sometimes people are putting choruses on their actual tracks. So if you add a chorus on top of a chorus, it sounds like shit. You know what I mean? If I unmute this one, very subtle. And then moving on here, this sign pad, this is that one that you kind of hear in the beginning of the song. Again, just a little bit of excitement, kind of found a nice little warm pocket here, mixing in a little bit, tiny little EQ just to kind of tame that one frequency there, and that's it. Here, I also used this S1 imager, and you see I took it off because I was going through the mix, and I was like, you know what? It doesn't even need that.
Gotcha.
I'm overdoing it.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is a huge thing to know when you're overdoing it.
Right.
To be honest with yourself, to say, hey, I'm just doing the most right now just because I'm trying to please myself, or I think this is what I should be doing.
Right.
The song doesn't actually need it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Understood.
Guitar, again, very simple. Just kind of taking a couple of notches off so everything has room to breathe. That's the vocal effect right there. This one's kind of cool. The vocal effect came straight down the middle. This is something I was telling you guys earlier about. You can create width, but you don't have to be extreme with it, right? So this is very, very subtle. So I'll just crank this so you guys can hear it a little better. But the actual width of it is not all the way up. I could have done this and had it swimming around the whole song, but that gets lost. You know what I mean? What I want to do is just create a little bit of space. So it's just moving a tiny little bit left to right. Now, if you're listening on a full speaker setup where you have left and right, you might notice this still feels like it's coming right down the middle. It doesn't feel like it's moving, but it is. And so when you mute that or you take off the pan man and everything's coming straight down the middle, you notice the difference. You know what I'm saying?
The movement is different.
Exactly. And then here we go again, just a little piano, just kind of, I bypassed everything but this band just to kind of give it a little bit of taming whenever that piano got a little too brittle at the top end.
Gotcha.
Trumpet, just creating a little bit of harmonic saturation with these trumpets. They're not real trumpets. So I'm just trying to bring a little bit more life out of them with that.
Right.
And then a doubler, you can see I have these turned way down, and it's just kind of adding a little bit of width to those. And then here again, I'm just using this MXR just to try to add a little bit of width again to this one sound, this guitar sound effect. Again, we're short on time, so I'm gonna keep running real quick. This is what I did on my overall mix bus for the all beat bus.
Okay.
Literally just felt like it could have been a little brighter. You know, just kind of had a little bit more excitement in the high end. So I just put a little shelf there. It's 1.5 dBs, 1.25 actually, dBs there. And look at that. I forgot to change that. I left it on. I know, right?
That's funny. He said you left it on 0.
Crucify me, you know?
How dare you, bro?
I have no shame.
0.
And then here on the vocal, all vocal bus, again, all the effects, all the reverbs, all the delays, all the parallel compression, everything is actually running through this.
Gotcha.
Right? But it's not doing much. This is literally taming the little bits that go above it.
Gotcha. Just little moments. Okay.
This lo-fi thing is super cool. If you guys have never used it, try it out. I literally put 0.1 on the distortion, 0.1 on the saturation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very subtle.
Oh, yeah.
But it just does something where it brings it to life.
Right.
And you're just like, wow, this is really nice, you know?
Right. And it's just for Pro Tools, just to let everybody know. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, just the Pro Tools thing,
Yeah,
you know?
sorry.
Stock
Yeah.
Pro Tools thing,
Sorry,
you
stock
know?
Pro Tools vibes, you know what I'm saying?
Shout out Avid for the amazing stock
Know what I'm saying?
plugins.
No,
Yeah.
this is like my favorite damn like lo-fi. Like that shit is
It's so
OD.
good.
Yeah.
You could use this on drums, put that on your drum bus,
Yeah.
do that little distortion, 0.1. You don't
Yeah.
have to do much.
Right.
You know, I feel like most of the time, man, especially for me when I was younger, I would literally grab these plugins, I'd be so excited to use them, I'd crank the shit.
Right.
I'd be like, what is this doing? You know what I mean?
Right,
Now
facts.
I'm a little bit more mature in this, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, I don't need that much. Let me
Right.
experiment with the subtleties of it.
Right. And that plugin is subtle as hell.
Very
Like,
subtle.
Very subtle. But it
it's
does
nice.
a lot. Yeah. It does,
and if
it's
you
nice.
don't have it in there, you notice it.
Yeah,
You know?
true.
This one is something very unique to the session. I never truly do this, but I was having a little bit of issues. I personally like when my vocals are right on this edge of this line here. So without this plugin, see how the vocals are a little low. I wanted to get a little more out of that. Now I could go back in and just turn everything up, which I should have done, you know what I mean? But I'm not perfect, so at the end of the day, I threw a limiter on there just to make it louder, and it's not doing much. As you can see, it's just literally just making it louder. I'm not limiting in any way. It's just literally giving it a little volume, right? Just to kind of get into that plugin a little bit better. And then here, I'm just getting a little bit of saturation out of this again. It's just a little tone thing. It's not doing much, a little drive. If you bypass it, you'll notice this. Well, here it'll be more obvious because it's being inputted +3. Now, I don't ever do that. I leave those at 0, and I make sure that whatever is the volume coming into it is where it should be. So usually I keep that at 0. This one is a 50-50. Sometimes I'll have it in, sometimes I won't, but just a little thickness, a little shimmer. It just kind of adds a little sparkle to it, you know what I mean? And then here again, just a little last minute, taming of some frequencies.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, just to finish it off, what everybody's always wondering about, the mix bus, the mix bus,
Yes.
right? Everybody makes such a big deal about the mix bus. Cool, I get it. Guys, if the mix bus was saving your mix, go back and save the mix.
Gotcha.
Don't allow the mix bus to do all that heavy lifting. You see here that I have Ozone 9, which this session's a little older, but Ozone 9, Limitless, and Invisible Limiter. Those are 3 plugins that are supposed to be limiting the session.
Right.
But all 3 of them are barely doing anything.
Gotcha.
So rather than me cranking one, I'm going in stages. So you can see here. That one's not even doing anything. It's barely doing anything. If I were to bring it down, also, guys, if your computer can handle it, experiment with this oversampling. I usually like to do this 32 times oversampling. It just gives it like a really nice, pristine, clear, high end.
Gotcha.
But it's very taxing on the computer, on the CPU. So if you can't handle it, it's not the end of the world. I did thousands of songs without that did super well.
Right.
It's not going to make or break the session,
Right. Right. I have a question for you too about the limiters that you have on. You're using these limiters to, correct me if I'm wrong, like control peaks and things of that nature before obviously you're about to send it off and stuff like that?
Really
like,
just loudness, man. Because
Gotcha.
at the end of the day, all these peaks are being controlled by the time it gets there.
Right.
You know what I mean? I also have this compressor right here that I'm using that's also doing that. Now again, I'm getting 1 dB of compression.
Right.
Very little. The attack, I usually always keep it at 30 because if you bring it back, it just cuts the punch completely.
Right,
yeah, the transient's gone.
Right.
I like to keep it at a very low ratio, and then on this release, I have it set right here, and I just play with it until it sounds right.
Gotcha.
And then for me, here on this output, I know that keeping it right on that line that starts to get red is where I like it, and that's where all my other plugins start to be happy, so I try to keep it right around there. And usually I could use this little output knob if I need to give it more, if I need to bring it down a little bit, but I never go down on it. I always just go up or just keep it at 0.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then this one, I'm just getting a little bit of color out of it. It's not doing much. I'm boosting 5, and I'm pretty much lowering almost 5. I'm getting maybe like 2-3 dBs out of it. And again, my whole mix bus is centered around just making this louder, right? It's not about, making the song better in a sense of mix. Yeah, it's enhancing certain things, but really it's just about making it louder.
Gotcha. Understood.
This Golf Foss plugin, I really love this. We spoke about this on your podcast, and I think it's super cool, man. Again, I'm barely doing anything on it. It's on 4%, and then these biases here, if you look here on the left, if I do this, does it do that for you guys? Yeah, okay. So you see this little line, that's your bias. So if you do this, it goes all the way down. If you do that, it goes all the way up. I like to set the bias to where that line just disappears, and it just goes right in the middle. And then at the bottom here, it's the same thing for brightness. So if you go all the way up, you'll see this one. If you go all the way down, I like to just get it to where it's... And ultimately, what that's doing is creating that kind of baseline level.
Get you. Okay.
Exactly. So it's not boosting the brightness. It's not taking the brightness down.
Right.
Creating that baseline. So it's kind of, if I bypass this plugin, it sounds like my mix. It doesn't sound like, oh my God, this thing is doing so much.
You change the sonics completely.
Exactly. Again, black box, just getting a little bit of juice out of it. A lot of the time, I would say 95% of the time, I'm running the black box at 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this mixed down thing.
right.
On this one, it felt good to do it. So I went with the little, at 100%, it was too much. It kept distorting the bass, kept distorting the logs.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me just bring it down. But it is adding a little bit of saturation to it, kind of making everything come to life.
Right.
This is where I was telling you guys about the high end. I'm boosting at 10K. I'm also cutting at 20K. That's where I say that really nice high end curvature comes out of. Boosting and cutting it, they all have different, whatever that is called. The 24 dBs,
yes,
36
per octave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're doing this and you're cutting it, it just creates a really nice curvature. And finding the middle ground between those two knobs is really, really, really nice to create this high end in the mix, then you don't have to go add a bunch of shit to all these different elements independently or anything like that. It's just kind of boosting the presence. I feel like most songs you need to make them brighter. Yeah, I don't know why that is. Even for myself, when I'm making songs and then I go into the mix process, I'm like, damn, why do I got to keep making this brighter? I don't know why that is.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering if you had like a idea, theory about that, because especially towards the end, I'm always like, I need to make it brighter. Like,
I don't know. It's just always like that for some reason. But some songs I need to do 4 dBs like this one. Other songs I'm doing 1, maybe 2. And I might not even be doing anything on the attenuate. And then here, as you can see, it's barely doing anything, but it is. You see this one, 2 tiny little notches. Makes a huge difference. I don't know why it's so aggressive, but it is. So that's literally just enough for me. Sometimes I'll do that right there. But again, if I'm having to do this, chances are I'm fucking up somewhere else. Like, I gotta go fix that. You know what I mean? And then last thing here, just breaking down this little ozone. Got a little bit of EQ. Just kind of wanted to bring that little bit of presence out as a whole, but I also wanted to control it. So here are the controlling elements. So these are little dynamic EQ. Kind of playing off of what I enhanced over here. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much just taming those little peaks that kind of go over what I wanted to boost. Yeah. And then here, again, another exciter. I'm kind of getting a little bit more out of the low end with the excitement here. That's why the mix is so high. Here, I'm getting a little bit more. I'm not really doing too much to the top end. I'm not doing a ton to the low end. It's doing more in the amount, but the mix is super down. So, understood. And again, I don't do this on every session. This is just case by case. Yeah, close your eyes and go for the feel. This low end focus here felt really good on this song. Just kind of helped poke that kick out a little bit more. I got it on the smooth. And again, I'm not following anything. This isn't a preset. I'm just moving it till it sounds good. Playing with the knobs, and boom, I like it here. I A/B it a bunch, and then.
I don't know many people that use this plugin. I love this plugin to death. What do you notice about it when you up the contrast? Like, because I see obviously you have about a 35 in the contrast. What are you looking from?
You know, it's interesting because I feel like every time I use it, it's always different. So like on this session, I was like, man, like upping the contrast made it punchier. Where like other sessions, I feel like making the contrast go up makes it less punchy. You know, so it's like, for me, I kind of just go with the feeling of it and what it's currently doing at that moment. I don't necessarily, I try to break myself away from this template-based idea of, let me do the same thing every time, just because this worked last time. You know what
understood.
I mean?
Yeah, I get you, okay. I don't see many people use this plugin. That's why I was like,
it is very rare.
It's weird. Like,
but it is great. And it's, if you overdo this one, it's the first one to really fuck everything up for you.
Okay.
I feel like this one is one of those that can really go wrong. And then here, just a little bit of width. Pretty standard stuff. I'm not doing any stereo, tricks with the, delaying left and right. I'm not doing any of that. And then you guys saw the maximizer. I got a little bit of transient emphasis here, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of this, the transient emphasis, but on this song, again, it felt good, so I ran with it, and very, very simple stuff. Not, I usually like modern. I usually like this modern a lot, or I like this IRC1. The IRC1 is really nice. The words, it says, look, smooth and thick, limiting for a rich sound.
I ain't gonna lie.
Right? That's like what everybody wants.
You know what's funny? Don't you click it and be like, yeah, it does sound rich and full.
Exactly. That's why you can't read this shit, man, because it tricks you.
I try. Hell yeah. I know what you mean.
But yeah, man, that's the water session.
So thank you so much, Dro, for what you do, man, and I really appreciate it, man.
I appreciate that.
Make some noise for Dro one time, y'all.
Thank you.